Alright, a while ago I did a video of if you show up as sun or moon in the birth chart. Now, I wanted to focus on the other planets because depending on sort of, you know, things like your physiognomy, your body type, you can actually have more of a relationship, more of a you can be more represented by certain planets in the chart depending. Like if you're tall and thin, that's like a Saturnine build, especially if someone has dark hair. Um, and then Saturn will sort of somehow become more relevant to you, and um, you can almost have your perspective is you're from Saturn's perspective, and then the other planets in the chart are sort of uh, more ancillary in a way, like as if who's the observer. I would say even in conjunctions, sometimes you can see this too. Like I have a Rahu Mercury Sun conjunction, and I feel like in the conjunction I'm more Mercury, observing the Sun being devoured by Rahu. I have that feeling. Um, I want to clarify here that this is a little bit more fringe. This isn't ABCs 1 2 3. This is like something a little more intermediate to advanced, um, and its use case is more fringe as well. Sun and Moon is also advanced, but it's a less fringe use case. So I wanted to give that disclaimer here that this is like quite esoteric what I'm talking about, in both senses of the word. So in a particular conjunction, um, each house, when you're in like the planets in the house, you can view as roommates within like the same apartment or something. Um, so excuse me. Like if it's the house of communication, um, let's say you can relate with the sun, or let's just go with Saturn, since I mentioned it already. So you're tall and thin. You've got, let's say, Saturn and Moon in what is it, in the third house. Saturn, you're representing Saturn, so you're the dark element. So sometimes it can turn out that you'll be a bad influence on others. Uh, because you're acting as Saturn, and when Saturn and Moon are conjunct, the darkness of Saturn is sort of corrupting the Moon, corrupting the mind. This is called Vish Yoga. But this also might be like the person, this Saturnine person who's tall and thin. Um, they could also just be quite strict and into like structures and such. So you'd have to look at the sign and things as well. Um, so this can be more of like a toy that you can use. I put it this way that you see a pattern and then that's a toy that you can use based on your intuition in a situation. It's not every time you see a conjunction it means X and Y. I think people, like a lot of astrologers, love to think that way because it's just very basic like pattern recognition. And certainly astrology has that for you to as that you can use. I mean, of course, there's pattern recognition in all of it, but I'm talking more of an intuitive astrology that's also sort of interwoven with planetary magic and sort of this sort of arbitelic kind of almost commune with the planets, praying to the planets, tantric connection to the planets, all these sort of layers. And when you look at the birth chart, you don't just see the planets and their quote unquote energies, you actually see, or their themes rather, you also see the planets as personalities, as repositories of knowledge, repositories of patterns, infinite repositories, infinitely deep. Um, so that's quite complex, and it's something that basically I would just recommend people do themselves some planetary magic to do it. Um, Anyways, I'm gonna see if you can really see it here. I don't know if you can really see it in the here, but like the way my cheekbones are, that's something of Mars. Okay, so when you see people with these very like pronounced sharp cheekbones, their Mars is going to be in very an interesting placement you're going to want to look at, and they're going to be identified with Mars as well. Um, you know, or like if people have more of a leonine face, so there's a like you'll probably see this with me, right? If you have the subtle sight for it, because I do magic. But if you feel like you're just drawn to look at my mouth, and there's just a lot of energy coming into the mouth, that's going to be like Rahu. Um, and also like some leonine features can be like Rahu. It can also be a bit like Leo, but I think Leo is going to manifest in the hair, like a good old mane of hair. Um, so it depends. And you can look at all these patterns, and like for example, I have some hair loss here. I have what is it? Venus in Leo, and so Venus controls the the hair follicles, and so in Leo, Leo, it's the sun. It's kind of hot. It's causing Venus to be overheated. Thus, the follicles get overheated and don't grow very nicely because they're just fried. So you can see all these connections, especially I've seen this sort of thing with like Vedic astrologers will talk about this sort of thing. I think looking at your Vedic chart, when you're looking for this kind of nitty gritty stuff, you're going to want to look at Vedic, at Jyotish. Western's more psychological. It's called tropical. It's seasonal. I would view it as it's the affect. Vedic is more like everything. It's comprehensive. It's the karma. It's the events, etc., etc., etc. Tropical, in my mind, is more like sort of ephemeral. It's more. It's like the weather. Or it's like the and then like Vedic is like the seasons, the years, the decade, the century even. And Vedic has so much more to it, as far that at least that is sort of typically known. I would say when I watch Western astrologers, they typically say the same sorts of things, and they have these their insights are kind of particular. Whereas Vedic, it's like you have I forget the main Vedic Jyotish system, but then there's like, so we'll just call it regular. Then there's Jaimini, then there's Bhrigu Nadinandi. You can look at Mahadashas, which I don't think Western really has an equivalent. I could be wrong. Could be that like medieval Western has an equivalent. I've seen some patterns like that. You know, also, I think it's interesting that Jyotish is based on Chitra. So the system is called, the sidereal system in Hindi is called Chitrapaksha, or also I forget the other name. It's the name of Lahiri. Nirgal Lahiri was the astrologer that made the system we now use. Maybe it'd be better to use like an older form, like Mahabharata style. I've looked into that before. I do resonate more with Lahiri, so maybe I need to see the light. We're always wrong looking to see higher light, and it takes some intuition to anticipate that. Are you the sort of person that can see the future? And that comes in handy in astrology. Anyways, moving on. So sun and moon are these very basic. It's this very basic, like, moon is mind and heart, and sun, I think, is very much related to the heart, like the solar plexus, the solar heart space. So this is a nice one that can be applied broadly, because some people are more mental and some people are more solar in that sense. In fact, I recently learned about in Zorvanism, or the early bone religion, I think it was, I saw this in just one video, so I'm not absolutely 100% on this. I'm not an expert. But apparently at the beginning of time, Zorvan, he emanated Ahura Mazda from his mind, and he emanated Angramanyu or Ariman from his heart. So I thought that was really interesting. I had always been taught, like in the Abrahamic tradition and Protestant faith, that you trust your heart, not your mind. But in Zorvanism, it's backwards. That I thought that was super interesting. But Zorvanism's even backwards from Brahmanism. Like the Ahuras are the gods, whereas in Hinduism, the Asuras are the demons. So very interesting. Anyways, Venus and Mercury always kind of follow the same path. They always follow close to the sun, and they go retrograde quite often. A Venusian person is going to be more like someone ruled by Venus is going to be more logical. They're going to be more they're going to be the sort of person that sort of, to make an omelet, they're okay with breaking a few eggs, or they're okay with breaking a few eggs to make an omelet. I'm saying, there's someone who's willing to bend the rules, kind of someone who's smarter than the rules, a Luciferian type person. So that's something interesting to see. If someone has such inclination, they can maybe try and look at Venus for what sort of to personify them. You can also choose to personify yourself through certain planets and certain placements. And you can actually use the chart, because the chart is a machine in a way, and you can use the machine for your benefit to get what you want. And so by choosing different planetary archetypes to kind of wear, you can do that sort of thing. Mercury or Mercurial person, they have a certain sort of face, especially a very androgynous face. Mercury rules over homosexuals, transgender, gender fluidity. So people are quite androgynous, and especially there's a certain face, but I can't really describe it. I've noticed people with a more ovaline face, I get that Mercury energy from them a lot. So people who are androgynous, people who are homosexuals, whatever, they can maybe look at Mercury. And these aren't these archetypes that I'm talking, these aren't archetypes really. These are just like little snippets and bits that I've gotten from my own meditation and experience. This isn't like ultimate, oh, if someone's gay, you look at Mercury and that'll tell you all about them. Certainly if someone is especially non-binary, I'm gonna look at Mercury for sure. I'm gonna be very interested in what Mercury is doing in their chart. But that's not going to be the end all be all of everything. It's just going to be interesting. So I don't feel comfortable talking definitively either about astrology. I don't think people really should, except like if there's a yoga, yeah, the yoga is going to mean what it's going to mean. But there's so many harmonizations of these things. Almost every bad thing can be also good, and a lot of like people have huge problems in their lives. You'll be looking at squares, you'll be looking at oppositions. Honestly, some of the most troubling patterns in the chart I've seen were actually trines, because the trines, the same elements, bounce off each other so much that if there's a problematic combination of that, there's a the harmony is actually problematic. It's it's harmonizing constantly, and anytime one part of the trine is triggered, it's just and it's an unstoppable train wreck right away that's going to happen over and over and over in people's lives. So I guess this video is partially talking about the other planetary sort of patterns that I've seen, patterns of how you can show up as these other planets in your chart. And on the other hand, I'm telling you that astrology, there's an obtuse, more intuitive, more multi-layered side of it. I want to speak to that, and that's what I'm interested in. That's where I like to sit. So, hence, I'm explaining that. So let's see, Mars. Like I said, Mars is in the cheekbones, especially if someone is very red. Of course, Mars is going to be very interesting. They're going to identify with Mars. You can also look at the mounds on the palm, but I'm not. If I would talk about that, I'd want to show my palm for demonstration. I'll have to get a chart out for that and make another video. So yeah, you can look at your palm, but the palm's the